All of these abilities are actually wrong in Path of Titans. These abilities changed back at the end of January and never got updated descriptions in game. So for the last about 2 months, they've actually been functioning pretty differently from what the text says in game. Oh, what's this? We have a Discord too? Link in the description. So today we're going to cover all of these outdated abilities, what the text should actually say in game, and which dinos are affected by them. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to go over the ability, what the in-game description is, and then what it's actually supposed to say based off of the patch notes posted in Discord, and then what dinos can use it. So first off, we have Lone Survivor, and the in-game description says 10% armor and increased maneuverability when not in a group. What it's supposed to say is 10% armor when not in a group, so the maneuverability got cut. And this affects by far the widest range of dinos on the entire list. The affected dinos are Alio, Spino, Struth, Paki, Kentro, Iggy, Io, Anno, Lamb, Amarg, Steg, Dinokairos, and Bars. Next up, we have lightweight scales. Now, this one's a little tricky because there are actually still, for some reason, 2 versions of lightweight scales that exist in the game. So we'll go over them both sequentially. So the in-game description of the first version says increase speed by 10% and decreases turn speed by 25%. Now, what the patch notes say is they've reduced that speed by 5% to 5%, and they've reduced the turn decrease penalty to 15% from 25%. The affected dinos are Conch, Metri, Allo, Rex, Campto, Struth, and Iggy. Now, the description of the other version of lightweight scales says increases speed by 10%, and that got reduced to 5% as well. So the patch notes description says increases speed by 5%, and the affected dinos are Serato, Paki, Alio, and Kentro. Next up, we have Balanced Tail. The in-game description for Balanced Tail is gain 15% improved turning. Now, the patch notes say gain 5% increased turning, and the patch notes state that it was previously 10%, which was never reflected in game. So Balanced Tail is actually gain 5% improved turning, not 15 and not 10. The affected dinos are Metri, Serato, Alio, Dasp, Picno, Allo, Rex, Paki, and Kentro. Next up, we have Drenched Blows. The in-game description for Drenched Blows is deal 10% increased damage to wet targets. The patch notes description says deal 20% increased damage to wet targets, so they actually doubled the damage of the ability. The affected dinos are Suko, Sarko, Spino, and Dinokairos. Next up, we have Twilight Menace. The in-game description of Twilight Menace is gain 15% increased stamina regeneration during night. This was changed to gain 20% increased stamina regeneration during night in the patch notes. The affected dinos are Metri and Meg. Next up, we have Bone Snap. So the only part of Bone Snap that they changed was the speed decrease when you have it equipped. The in-game description says you have a 15% speed decrease. They changed that in the patch notes to a 10% speed decrease, so it doesn't quite slow you down as much. The only affected dino with this change is Dasp. Next up is Gripping Claws. The in-game description of Gripping Claws says turn 20% faster when on the ground. The patch notes description says reduce turn rate from 10% to 5%. And keep in mind that 10% wasn't showing in game, it's showing 20. So that one has also been incorrect for a long amount of time. And the only affected dino is Picno. Next up, we have Balanced, or as it's referred to in the patch notes, Balanced Legs. The ability description in-game says gain 15% improved turning speed. The patch notes ability description says reduce turn radius boost from 10% to 5%. And this was another one that is not showing 10% in game, it's showing 15%. So here's another ability where the description has not been updated in game for quite some time. The affected dinos are Stirka, Alberta, and Io. And I wanted to slide one bonus one in here because this is a change that I think is pretty noteworthy. So we have Tail Attack, specifically for Amarg. The in-game description of Amarg's Tail Attack is an attack that causes light damage. Now, most of you probably already know this, but in the patch notes, they added knockback to the Amarg's Tail Attack, which is very important. The affected dinosaur here obviously being Amarg. Now, I'm sure I've missed a few outdated abilities here, but these were the most recent and prevalent ones that I saw changed in the patch notes that weren't updated in-game. There was a vague note in the public test branch about updating some of the abilities to be more clear, so that might fix some of these, it might not, I'm really not sure, we'll have to see when it comes out. Hopefully these descriptions get fixed in-game soon, as a lot of them have a pretty large impact on your gameplay and what options you might choose to run instead. Anyhow, I've been your host Conware, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.